The stone was supposed to stay closed, the body was supposed to remain still, and fear was supposed to have the final word. But early Sunday morning, everything changed. Mark 16, verse 1-8 tells one of the most extraordinary moments in human history, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But instead of walking through it in the usual linear way, today we will look at the resurrection through a different lens, through the eyes of the women who came to the tomb before sunrise, through the silence of the empty grave, and through the unexpected emotions that surrounded the first announcement that Jesus was alive. The Gospel of Mark is the earliest gospel written, and its account of the resurrection is raw, unpolished, honest, and deeply human. It does not begin with angels singing or disciples running. Instead, it begins with grief, duty, love, and uncertainty. It begins with women walking in the dark toward a tomb they believed held the body of their Lord. The passage begins early on Sunday morning, just after sunrise. But before we picture warm light breaking over the horizon, we need to imagine the hours leading up to that moment. Saturday was the Sabbath, a day of forced stillness. The women who loved Jesus could do nothing but wait. They knew where he had been laid. They saw Joseph of Arimathea roll the stone into place. They had prepared spices and perfumes, but they could not anoint him because of the Sabbath. So they waited. And grief is never heavier than when you cannot act. When the Sabbath ended, they rose early, carrying spices, determined to honor Jesus' body. Their devotion is quiet but profound. While the disciples mourn behind locked doors, the women move toward Jesus with courage and love. The resurrection story begins not with a miracle, but with faith expressed in simple obedience. As they walk, they talk about a problem that worries them. Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb? This detail reveals just how human this moment is. They do not expect a miracle. They do not expect an empty tomb. They expect a stone too heavy for them to move. Their devotion moves them forward, even when the outcome seems impossible. But when they arrive, something is wrong, and something is right. The stone is already rolled away. This isn't a small stone removed a few inches. This is a massive, circular rock that required several strong men to move. Positioned in a carved track, once it rolled into place, it was meant to stay there. The women feel a surge of confusion before fear kicks in. Who moved it? Did grave robbers come? Did the authorities take Jesus' body? They step inside, hearts pounding, and instead of Jesus, they see a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side. Mark does not over-describe him, but his presence is clearly supernatural. The women are alarmed, overwhelmed by fear and wonder. He speaks words that will echo through all of history. Do not be afraid, you seek Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He has risen, he is not here. Each phrase is loaded with power. Do not be afraid, heaven's message to humanity from the beginning. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, the same Jesus, the real Jesus, the one they followed. Who was crucified, confirming his identity and his death. He has risen, the greatest declaration the world has ever heard. He is not here, the empty tomb is the evidence. The angel then invites them to see the place where his body had been laid. This is important. Their faith will not rest on emotion or imagination, but on evidence. The tomb is empty, not spiritually, but physically. Jesus is risen, not metaphorically, but literally. And then comes the message they are entrusted to deliver. Go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. His disciples, the ones who abandoned him, and Peter, the one who denied him. This detail shows the heart of Jesus. Even in his resurrection, he restores, he heals, he calls back those who failed him most. But the women react in a way that surprises many readers. Instead of immediately running with joy, Mark says they ran away trembling, astonished, afraid, and overwhelmed. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Why this reaction? Because resurrection was not expected. Not by the leaders, not by the disciples, not by the women. Resurrection was beyond their categories, beyond their imagination, beyond anything they had ever seen. They came to honor a dead body, not meet a risen Lord. Fear at the resurrection is not a sign of lack of faith. It is a sign of encountering something too powerful, too holy, too unexpected to fit into ordinary emotions. Awe comes before joy. Trembling comes before celebration. And it is here that Mark's perspective is so profound. He doesn't hide the confusion, the uncertainty, the rawness of the moment. He lets us feel the shock of the first witnesses. He lets us experience the beginning of resurrection as they experienced it. Not as a polished story, but as a life-shaking event. This viewpoint reveals several powerful truths. First, God often works when we are least expecting it. The women expected to encounter death. Instead, they found life. They expected a sealed tomb. Instead, they found an open one. They expected finality. Instead, they witnessed the beginning of a new world. Second, God entrusts the greatest message to unexpected people. In a culture where women's testimony was rarely valued, God chooses women to be the first to hear and proclaim the resurrection. They are faithful when the men are hiding. They move toward Jesus when others withdraw. Their devotion becomes the doorway through which resurrection hope enters the world. Third, resurrection begins with fear because resurrection overturns everything. Fear is not the opposite of faith. It is often the beginning of it. Encountering God's power is overwhelming. The women's trembling shows that resurrection is not a small comfort. It is a collision with the supernatural. Fourth, Jesus' resurrection is personal. Tell his disciples and Peter. Peter's failure is not the end. Jesus calls him by name. The resurrection brings restoration. Fifth, the empty tomb is the foundation of Christian hope. Christianity is not built on teachings alone. It is built on an event, the resurrection. If Jesus is alive, everything changes. If Jesus is alive, sin is conquered, death is defeated, salvation is real, and hope is eternal. This different vantage point helps us appreciate the resurrection, not as a distant historical fact, but as a moment that broke into ordinary lives with extraordinary power. The women went to the tomb expecting grief, but walked away carrying a message that would transform the world. The empty tomb still speaks. It speaks to our fears, saying, "Do not be afraid." It speaks to our failures, saying, "Tell Peter." It speaks to our doubts, saying, "He is not here." It speaks to our future, saying, "You will see him." It speaks to our world, saying, "He is risen." Every person must respond to the empty tomb. Some will explain it away, some will ignore it, some will fear it, but those who believe it will never be the same. The resurrection of Jesus is not just the end of the Gospel of Mark, it is the beginning of the church. It is the beginning of mission. It is the beginning of new life. It is the beginning of a hope that outlives suffering, persecution, and death itself. And what makes Mark's ending so striking is that it stops in the tension, in the fear, in the astonishment, in the raw emotion of the first witnesses. It invites us to finish the story with our lives. The resurrection is not something we only read. It is something we step into. As we reflect on this passage through fresh eyes, we see the resurrection not as a familiar tradition, but as a world-shaking revelation. The women walking in the dark become the first heralds of dawn. The stone meant to seal death becomes the sign of victory. The tomb carved to hold a body becomes the evidence of life. And Jesus, silent in death, now speaks through the empty grave, calling his followers to meet him, to trust him, to proclaim him. This moment changed everything. It still changes everything today. Thank you for watching this message. If this teaching strengthened your faith, please like this video, follow the Holy Path Insights channel, share it with someone who needs hope, and continue watching our full series as we walk together through the Gospel of Mark.